All right, my secondary math 1 class. Today is a review day. That means that next time will be your test. Remember that you get to use all of your notes on the test, so the better notes you take, the easier your test will be. Okay, so we are reviewing some aspects about triangles, specifically the Pythagorean Theorem. Okay, so on numbers 1 through 4, though, we're not talking about sides of triangles. In fact, these aren't even right triangles. They don't have right angles in them, angles with 90-degree measures. Okay, so in order to find missing angles or solve for x's within angles, we have to identify that all 3 angles in a triangle, okay, so in a triangle, all 3 angles add to 180 degrees. Okay? Hi, Holly, I'm filming right now. Sorry.
Is Randy gone
Yes.
for the rest of the week?
Yes. Okay, sorry about that. So we know that all 3 of these angles have to add to 180 degrees. Okay? So if we know that all 3 angles always add to be 180, we can use the angles that it gives us to find the missing angles. Okay, so for number 1, it gives us 2 angles. It gives us 40 degrees and 60 degrees. Okay, so knowing that 2 angles it gives us, we can find the third by subtracting them from 180. So we're going to take 180 degrees, and we are going to subtract the 2 angles that it gives us. So 40 and subtract 60 in order to find this missing angle. Okay, so we can do this in a calculator if you'd like, or in your head. So we can go 180 minus 40 minus 60, and we know that that third angle has to equal 80 degrees. So 80 degrees. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for number 2. So it gives us 2 angles. It gives us 37 and 96. So we're going to take our total number of degrees, which is 180, and subtract the 2 angles that it gives us, 37 minus 96, in order to find that third missing angle. Okay, so our question mark angle right there. Okay, so we can go ahead and put this in a calculator. 180 minus 37 minus 96. So we know that that third angle has to equal 47 degrees, which is right there. Okay, so that's simply where we're given 2 angles and we're trying to find the third one. Okay, well, in numbers 3 and 4, I'm actually going to change the directions a little bit. Instead of finding the measure of angle A, we are simply going to solve for x. Okay, so let's look at number 3. What angle does it give us? What angle do we know? It only gives us 1 angle, 35. Okay, the 2 other angles have x's in them, which means we don't know what these add up to or measure to because we don't know what x is. Okay, so we know that 7x is this angle, 8x is that angle. Okay, so in order to solve this, we can't subtract from 180 because we only have 1 angle, but that's okay. We can add them to 180. Okay, so let's take the angle that it gives us, 135, plus the 2 other angles, even though they have an x in them, so 7x plus 8x, and it all has to equal what? 180 degrees. Okay, so knowing this, we can solve for x. Okay, so in order to solve for x, we need there to only be 1 x over here, or all the x's need to be combined. Okay, so I see that 7x and 8x are like terms, so we can combine them. So 7 plus 8 is going to give me 15x. Okay, then I have my equals 180 and my 135 that's being added to that 15x. Okay, well now there's 2 steps to getting x by itself. So I need to get rid of this positive 135 first. So the opposite of positive 135 is subtract 135 from both sides of my equal sign. And I'm going to come up over here just to give us some more room. Okay, so I have 15x left over. And on this side, I have 180 subtract 135. Okay, you can do this in a calculator if you want. 180 minus 135, and that's going to give me 45. Okay, so my x is almost by itself. Now I need to get rid of times by 15. So what is the opposite of times by 15? We are going to divide by 15. So my x is all by itself on that side. What is 45 divided by 15? Divided by 15, we get 3. So x is equal to 3. So remember, when you cannot subtract them from 180 because we only are given one angle, they can always add to 180. Combine like terms and solve for x. Beautiful. Okay, so let's look at number 4. So what is the angle that it gives us, the angle that we know? So it only gives us 48. Okay, the other two angles have x's in them. They are equations. Okay, so instead of subtracting the angles that it gives us, we have to add them up. Okay, so I have 48 plus the two other angles, even though they have x's in them, that's okay. 7x plus 4 plus 4x plus 18 were those last two angles, and they all add to be 180. Okay, so just like we did on number 3 where we had to combine like terms, we need to combine like terms on this side of my equal sign. Okay, so I see I have a 7x and a 4x that I can combine. 7x's plus 4x's are going to give me 11x's. Okay, then I have just numbers, 48 plus 4 plus 18. And we can combine all of those, 48 plus 4 plus 18, to give us 70. So 11x plus 70 equals 180. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start solving for x. So I need to get rid of this plus 70 first. And the opposite of plus 70 is subtract 70. So I get 11x is equal to 180 minus 70 is going to give me 180 minus 70, just double checking, 110. Okay, now to solve for x, my very last step is to get rid of that times by 11. The opposite of times by 11 is divide by 11. So we get x is all by itself over here. 110 divided by 11 equals 10. So our x equals 10. And there we go. Beautiful. So on 1 through 4, we were solving for angles, or x's within angles of a triangle. Okay, angles are always going to add to 180. Okay, but on 5 through 7, our last problems, we're talking about sides of triangles. Okay, we're not talking about angles, and sides don't have a specific rule. Okay, so on number 5, it's asking us to find the missing side of each triangle. Okay, so we have a right triangle here with a missing side. We don't know what x is. So in order to find a missing side of a right triangle, we are going to have to use Pythagorean's theorem. Okay, and the Pythagorean theorem states that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, and if you need to remind yourself, draw a little right triangle. Okay, so there's our right angle, excuse me. So we know that the legs that make up that right angle are A and B. Our hypotenuse across from our right angle is always C. So that's where we get our A, B, and C to plug in. So knowing that, let's go ahead and look at number 5. Okay, so where is my A, B, and C? Well, C is always across from my right angle because that's my hypotenuse. So we know that 10 is C. And A and B, it actually doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm just going to do X is A, and 8 is b. Okay, so now I'm going to plug the values that I know into my Pythagorean theorem to solve. So I have a squared, a is x, so x squared, plus b squared, b is 8, so 8 squared, equals c squared, my c is 10, so 10 squared. Beautiful. Okay, so now I can start solving for x. And before I do that, I need to simplify these numbers. So x squared we can't simplify because we don't know what x is, so that just has to stay x squared. Plus 8 squared. Okay, well what is 8 squared, or 8 times 8? We get 64. Equals 10 squared. What is 10 times 10? We get 100. Okay, so now looking at our same side as our x, we need to get x by itself. So the first thing we got to get rid of that's farthest away from my x is this plus 64. Well, the opposite of plus 64 is subtract 64. So we're going to subtract 64 from both sides. So I get x squared is left over here. 100 minus 64 is 36. Okay, and the very last step to getting x by itself, the opposite of square is square root. So we have to square root both sides. Those cancel each other out to give me x all by itself. And what is the square root of 36? What is the number that multiplies by itself to give me 36? Okay, we know that 6 times 6 is 36, so the square root of 36 is 6. If you have a calculator, which you're more than welcome to use, you can do our second button. Okay, find the square root symbol, 36, and we get 6. So our missing side of our right triangle was 6. That side right there. And there we go. Okay, so remember, when we get a nice pretty number like that, no decimals, no radicals, that means this is a Pythagorean triple. 6, 8, 10 is a Pythagorean triple. They're all nice pretty numbers. Okay, number 6, we might not get a nice pretty number, and that's okay. We're going to start it the exact same way. So we need to identify in number 6 our A, our B, and our C. Okay, so what is my A, B, and C? Okay, so I know that my C is 15. It's always across from my right angle. So I have C. Sorry, I'm recording right now.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. What is this for?
For guidance.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we know that our across from our right angle is C. A and B don't really matter, so I'm just going to go that 5 is A and X is B. Okay, so I have A squared. My A is 5, so 5 squared. Plus B squared, my B is X, so X squared. Equals C squared, my C is 15, so 15 squared. All right, let's do some simplifying before we can solve for X. Okay, so we have 5 squared. What's 5 times 5? We get 25. Okay, X squared we can't simplify because we don't know what X is, so that has to stay X squared. Equals 15 squared. 15 times 15 gives me 225. Okay, now looking at my side with my X, I need to get rid of this positive 25 first. Well, what is the opposite of positive 25? We're going to subtract 25. So I have X squared is left over here. 225 minus 25, excuse me, is going to give me 200. Okay, now my very last step for getting X by itself, the opposite of square is square root. So we're going to square root both sides. So that's going to give me X by itself. Okay, now I don't know if there's a number that multiplies by itself perfectly to give me 200. So I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator. Okay, so I have second square root button, 200. And I get this big long decimal. Okay, so on your test, it might ask you for the exact answer. When you hear the words exact answer, you want to keep it as a square root. Okay, in fact, let's make that note on our paper. Exact answer is square root. Okay, but let's say it wants it as a decimal. Let's say it wants you to round to the nearest tenth or the first decimal place. Okay, so that means I'm looking at my first decimal place and looking at the number after it. Since this 4 is below a 5, our 1 is going to stay a 1, so our final answer is 14.1. Okay, so this is if it wants it as a decimal. Okay, exact answer or a decimal. Okay, same thing. Perfect. So notice we didn't get a nice pretty number like on number 5. Excuse me. Okay, let's look at our last example. Okay, so this is where we're bringing the Pythagorean theorem into a word problem. Okay, so we are going to read the word problem and I'm going to underline information that I think is going to be important. Okay, so it says a 15-foot ladder is leaning against the side of a house. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw this picture. So we have a 15-foot ladder. It's leaning against the side of a house. Okay, so this is my side of my house. We know that the ladder is 15 feet tall. Okay, the bottom of the ladder is 12 feet away from the bottom of the house. Okay, so the bottom of the ladder to the bottom of the house is 12 feet. How high does the ladder reach the side of the house? Okay, so we're looking for how high right there. Okay, so we just created a right triangle. Now all we have to do is identify A, B, and C in order to plug it into our Pythagorean theorem to solve. Okay, so for number 7, I can see that my C is 15 because that's across from my right angle. And I'm going to make X my A and 12 my B. Okay, so now I can go ahead and plug it into my Pythagorean theorem. So I have A squared, my A is X, so X squared, plus B squared, my B is 12, so 12 squared, equals C squared, my C is 15, so 15 squared. Okay, so now we're not even really dealing with the word problem. Oops, sorry, I didn't even underline. 12 feet away from the bottom of the house. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and solve. So we can't simplify X squared because we don't know what X is. So that just has to stay X squared. Okay, plus 12 squared. What is 12 squared? We get 144 equals 15 squared, or 15 times 15, 225. Okay, so now in order to solve for X, I need to get rid of plus 144. So what is the opposite of plus 144? Subtract 144. Okay, so I have X squared is left over by itself. 225 minus 144, I'm doing it in my calculator, is going to give me 81. Okay, and my very last step for getting X by itself, square root both sides, that'll give me X all by itself. And the square root of 81, or what number multiplies by itself to give me 81, is 9, because 9 times 9 is 81. Okay, so in context, if we were to answer this question with a sentence, we would say the ladder reaches 9 feet high on the house. And there we go. Okay, those are your notes for today. There is an assignment that goes with it.